Welcome back to High Mileage Need Love 2, the channel where we talk about cars. But since the ad revenue's been a little lacking lately, we're going to talk about some motorcycles. This is my 2017 KTM 350 EXCF. It's the greatest goddamn dirt bike I've ever had. Oh, and it's got a kickstart. All right, for those of you short on time, this is not going to be an in-depth review as to the technical specs, how much horsepower this thing produces, or all that stuff. This is just a review of my experience using the KTM 350 EXCF to ride the Northeast Backcountry Discovery Route. Now, a little background on me is I ride a lot of mountain bikes. I've ridden a lot of mountain bikes. It wasn't until a couple of years ago where I decided to try dirt biking, and I started on a 2019 Honda Monkey that I kitted up and did a couple of sections of the NEBDR with my buddy. So as you can see, I started on a Honda Monkey, kind of get my feet wet, and it did pretty good. After the trip with the Monkey, I wanted a bigger bike. I went and I bought a 2016 WR250R Yamaha. And I used that bike to do those same two sections, sections 1 and 2, with a buddy again, and kind of get my feet wet on a bigger bike, larger displacement, taller, etc., etc. And overall, I had a really good experience with that bike. Being 5'7", they said, you know, it might be a little bit too tall for you, yada, yada, yada. But I'm able to get 1 foot down sitting on the bike. If I scooch a butt cheek off, I can get full foot down, like heel, toe, all that good stuff. And that bike was really great. Only issue with that bike was I would have to wring it out to really get the power, which all the reviews will tell you. A lot of that power is made at the top end, which is pretty good for an amateur rider. That way you're not whiskey throttling yourself into the woods or what have you, which did occur to me, but it did pretty good. I wasn't fazed by it, you know, had a couple of falls here and there, but otherwise it was a really good experience, and it built my confidence to go to the next level, something with a little bit more low-end power. So when I got home after the trip, I listed that WR250R on Facebook Marketplace, and I went looking for a CRF 450L, but those bikes were way too expensive, and they were completely stock. I would have to spend a lot of money into the modifications for the jetting, and not the jetting, but the tuning, the ECU to fix the flame outs, the throttle tamer, all that other stuff to kind of make it where I can use it on some technical trails. So I ended up doing a little bit more research, and I opted to try a KTM 690 Enduro, and I went out and I bought a 2018. And that bike was phenomenal. On the road, it was great. I took it out to Windrock Bike Park in Tennessee in the middle of January. Everything was clay, mud, and I had the heaviest bike out of my group of friends. Everybody was on like 252 strokes or KDXs, etc. Just dirt bike, you know, dirt-oriented bikes. And here I am with my behemoth of a 690 Enduro. And I was able to do a lot of the trails, Trail 22 being one of them, full of mud, clay, all this stuff. It was a little rough, it was a little tough, but the 690 got through it with its gearing. It was okay, it was easy to ride. I probably dropped that bike more than 20 times, and I was able to pick it right back up just because of the weight. I think it weighs like 390 or something like that pounds. And after that trip, I decided that I needed something a little bit more nimble, something I can kind of throw around, what have you. So once again, got back, put that thing on Facebook Marketplace, got it sold, and then once again went looking for a CRF 450L. There was a couple where I almost had a nice deal on it, had a lot of the modifications I needed, but the buyers just weren't responding. So I looked up the KTM 500 EXCF, the KTM 450, and the KTM 350. The 500s that were local to me weren't all that great. The 450s, as I did more research, I was reading that the maintenance intervals and just the way the bike rides, it's really made for the track and not for what I was intending to do with it. After watching Big Rock's Moto review on his unicorn of a 350 EXCF, I decided that I'm going to look for one of those, take one for a ride, and see how I feel on that. And that's how I found this 17 350 EXCF. It was on Facebook Marketplace with a lot of the mods already done. The end cap mod, the desmog, it has a tuner, the hand guards, a mini navigation tower, just a lot of amenities I would have had to put into the bike if I had bought it new or what have you. And it was at a really good deal. So I went and I test rode it, and I immediately fell in love with the power, the size, the weight, and just the feel, the overall feel of the bike. It just fit me almost perfectly. So I brought the thing home, and I had to do a couple of modifications to it before my trip. So let's talk about a few of those. All right, so starting with arguably the most important part of the dirt bike, the tires. When I bought the bike, it came with 2 sets of wheels, a XL with Talon hubs and TKC 80 tires front and rear, as well as a set of tubeless setup Michelin, what are these, Starcross medium. And I would have loved to take these tires, but they are not DOT tires. They are very aggressive, and I had previously a set of TKC 80s on a Triumph Scrambler that I owned for a little bit, and I loved how those tires handled in the rain, on the road, and like some light gravel. But if I could do it all over again, I would not take these tires on the NEBDR. They were phenomenal on the road, and hard pack, they were pretty good. But loose gravel, mud, and all that stuff, they were not that great. In the loose gravel, I wasn't able to lean the bike as much as I was on pavement and kind of like really dig in to those corners, take those turns as fast as I wanted to. I would get rear end slippage, and the bike, the rear end would kick out and what have you. I would definitely not recommend the TKC 80s for your NEBDR or whatever kind of trip you want to ride with these. I met a couple of guys during the trip who were running Motaz tires, and they seem to love those. So for next year, that's probably what I'm going to run. I'm going to ditch the TKC 80s and just run a set of Motaz, probably with tubes. I don't think I'm going to use the tubeless setup, just because every morning you got to check the pressures and all this stuff. I'd rather just have a tube, and if I have to change a tube, I'll change a tube. When I got the bike, it came with a Vapor dashboard. Let me just get rid of this bike's mullet over here. Came with the Vapor dashboard. It came with a 690 front windscreen, what have you. Moto-minded little USB tower thing. The Scott steering damper. Came with the mirrors, the Adventure whatever mirrors. It's got a tuner. It came desmogged, as well as the muffler end cap. What I ended up doing was, before I forget, the steg pegs. I highly recommend a set of steg pegs if you're going to be riding dirt. You're going to wear tall dirt bike boots. These things, I mean, I can't describe how great these things are. I was able to kind of loosen up my grip on the bars and just kind of cruise when I was on the road or in like some long dirt, hard packed dirt sections. Kind of take the vibrations away from the forearms. And we'll talk about vibrations in a little bit. But I added the rally pegs with the extension in the back just to get a little bit more comfort. The folding shifter, orange, because, KTM and all that stuff. I added a orange rear brake lever. I got Moscow Moto 10-liter bags that I had on here, as you can see. And then I added the 3-gallon Acerbis tank, which was a breeze to install. Didn't take that long. And it worked out great. I was able to get about 150 miles to the tank, and there was enough gas stations around where it wasn't that big of a deal. I had this rear rack and this pull thingy here, which I never really had to use. And that's really about it. The bike handled phenomenal. I did have a kickstart added after the trip, just because I had it. It came with the bike, but it wasn't installed, so I had it installed. It's pretty cool. With the rally pegs, you don't get the full throw, so that's kind of an issue. You could still get a throw to start over the bike as a secondary in case your battery dies or what have you. The suspension I had set up for my weight. I am 5'7". 172 pounds. I think during the trip, I was probably like 180, 185, a little chunky. But at 5'7", I can throw a leg over this thing without any issues. And it sags just enough to get 2 toes down on the ground. And if I just put my foot on the foot peg and scooch a butt cheek off, I can get my foot all the way down. Riding the bike, no issues. It was very comfortable. I didn't have any arm fatigue, arm pump, or any of that stuff. Again, I did use the steg pegs from time to time, just kind of take the vibrations off my hands. I did install these, I think it's Pro Grips. They're on Amazon. I'll link them in the description if I remember to. And I had these on my Monkey. I had these on my WR250R. I had these on my 690. And by far, the best grips money can buy. Very comfortable, very soft, squishy, and they feel good. One other thing I did install was the throttle tamer. And that helped out a lot because when I first got this bike, I believe I had the gray cam installed, and with the gray cam, it was pretty snappy. The throttle was pretty snappy. It just went, and that made me a little bit uncomfortable before going into the trip, because I knew that sections 4 had some pretty technical stuff, and I didn't want to whiskey throttle and hurt myself, being that I was going by myself. So I went and I bought the G2 throttle tamer, and it made the bike perfect. I think up until like a quarter throttle, it's tame, and anything above a quarter is stock. So highly recommend the G2 throttle tamer on this thing. So the only issue I had with the bike during the trip, and it was closer towards the end of the trip, was the bike kept cutting out. I kept losing power. It would just kind of sputter and kick until it died, and I had to pull over on the side of the road a few times and try to troubleshoot and figure out what was going on. First thing I went and I checked was the fuel pump relay, which I believe is under this panel, or maybe it's this panel. But I took that out. I checked it. You look at a relay and it looks like a relay. So I put that back in. I checked the cables. After looking online, I saw a forum post that said you should reroute this ground cable to the front engine ground cable, and that eliminates it. But I didn't have any of that stuff on me at the time. So what I did was I just kept tightening this down, taking it off and tightening it down, and seeing if that would fix it. But let me see if I can get this to do it. Let's see. I'm gonna fire up the bike. See if we can mimic. So that little sputter that you heard, that was the issue I was having, and it was because of this cable. Apparently, for some reason, this is a very common issue, and once again, there's a kit where you can make your own kit and just route it to the front engine ground, which is underneath the gas tank somewhere. That's on my to-do list this winter. Outside of the ground cable issue, there was no other problems with the bike. The maintenance intervals are pretty fair. I think the service manual for the 2017s still rated the oil changes and services in hours. The newer ones, I believe, give you miles. But what I ended up doing was I changed the oil I did my first oil change after 500 miles. Not the first oil change on the bike, period, but just my first oil change during the trip was after 500 miles. And it took 1 quart of oil. I carried the quart with me, and I had 3 filters did that oil change, and then I bought another quart and kept it on me. And I did the second oil change after 700 miles, and then I did another oil change when I got back home after the trip was over. Very easy to do. I drained the oil, I put it right into the container. To get all the oil out, I would lay the bike on its side just to get every last drop out, and then put new oil in, place the filter. Overall, it took maybe 15, 25 minutes tops to completely do the oil, and then I was back on the road. Overall, great experience with the bike. Going to be hanging on to it and hopefully doing another BDR this coming summer. Would I recommend this bike for somebody looking to do the BDR? Absolutely. Would I recommend another bike? If you have the money, it seems to me that the CRF 450L, fully kitted out with all the modifications it needs, is probably one of the best around the world bikes. It's a Honda, very reliable. In terms of ease to work on, the price you can get these for secondhand, and the amount of aftermarket parts available for these bikes, it blows the Honda completely out of the water. I believe I read online that when tuned and modded, this bike makes the same amount of power as a 450L, and I think it's lighter. I don't know. I never got to ride a 450L, but I'm very happy with my 350. It does everything I need it to do. I can throw a set of dirt wheels on it and take it on a motocross track or what have you. It's just, it's a great bike. It truly is a dual sport. On the highways, I was able to get this thing up to 75 miles an hour. Pretty comfortable, no issues there. And on the dirt, it handled really, really well. I was very happy with it, very light. It's pretty forgiving, with the G2 throttle tamer and the other mods, the pegs and all that stuff. It's a comfortable, very comfortable bike, and I'm looking forward to taking it on a few more trips.